Okay, welcome to the second video for the Westworld Elevated Scrutiny subreddit. We're having a look again at this linear timeline of parallel worlds. In this video, I just want to focus on the first row, which is the old world timeline, spanning from 2015 to 2068, roughly. So from the Ford's birth to roughly the time when Ford retreated into Westworld, 30 years before the events of season 3. Right, so just this first row, going into the details of the information in each block. The divergence, the location and the Google Maps location, the arc degrees, which is the event in the show, and then the event itself, which is like the postmark for what actually happened in each event. Right. So before we do that, I just want to start with a quick summary of the first video. We defined the rows and the columns, explain where they come from, explain the need for this new timeline. So the rows are the parallel worlds. We have 4 of them, 4 different timelines. The old world, the new world, season 3 first loop, season 3 second loop. Right, so these rows. Then we have these columns with the different colors. So the first thing to notice is the width of each block is variable. For example, this block is 27 years, this block is 2 years. So we're not matching these blocks linearly by time, we're matching them by the event themselves. And so in the first video, we talked about how these 2 events, these 2 yellow, these 2 green, are events that happen on the opposite side of the circle. Right, so they're mirrored events. And we'll take a quick look at this circle. Right, so for example, the pink, the first pink event happens down here, and then across on the other side of the circle, another pink event, right? So here's our first timeline starting from yellow, ending at red, and then a second timeline starting at yellow, going this way. Right, so a quick look at this circle where this whole timeline and colors idea came from. In the first video, we also went into some details about this circle. Right, specifically, when Caleb sees it, it runs this way, which would be clockwise, and then we're interpreting it as being counterclockwise. So there's this idea of time, going in different directions. Reminiscent of the Westworld logo, where we have the circle of the mountains on either side. 2 different timelines. Okay, back to this. So I think the final thing we pointed out was the ages. Robert's age being roughly 83 when he dies, and Sirach's age roughly being 60 by the end of season 3. Right. So I think, we now can start digging into some of these divergence events. So the first one being this 2025 event, which we know is the mushroom cloud from the season 3 trailer. Right, so these coordinates land in Hawaii. Now, that's sort of just an estimate. There's a couple Redditors who got pretty close to these coordinates, but as far as I know, I haven't heard of anyone being able to actually read the coordinates off the screen. They're really hard to read. But both people I talked to said the coordinates were off the coast of USA, somewhere in the ocean. One person said Hawaii. So I've got it labeled as Hawaii. But we don't actually have coordinates for that one. Okay, so this is the first event in the timeline. Interesting, right? Because when we look at the circle, it's the last event in that timeline, the end of human civilization. Right, so going back to this idea of time reversing on itself, kind of makes me think of like the Big Bang. Like if we want time to go this way and for the universe to unfold, we have to pick a time to start. Like, if we were running time in reverse to the Big Bang, we can't actually get there with the laws of physics. We can only get so close, so. And so if we're going this way, time goes off to infinity as we approach this end of the circle, but we have to pick a place to start. So the end of the timeline becomes the start of the timeline. Right, okay. So back to this event. So this is the mushroom cloud, right? The first event that we see. Here's young Serac, or young Robert, according to this new timeline, watching the mushroom cloud with the cow, of course. Right. Robert Ford is born, grows up, and sees his home destroyed, has to leave everything behind. Right, okay, so then next event is this green Jaipur, India event. So the divergence coordinates are here in Jaipur. So right next to this Jai Mahal Palace structure right here, and this railway stadium, and also right on a metro line. Right. Okay, so Jaipur. Okay, so here we have the Jai Mahal Palace that we just zoomed in on. And if we look at these blocks and the shapes, they are matching the blocks that we see in Arnold's house in season 2, and he brings Dolores there. In fact, you can see this white palace, resembling in a sense Dolores's hand as it, touches in this case it would be the garden. Right, okay, so then the arc degrees are what we see here, with the Serac brothers, or the Ford brothers, representing their world domination with Rehoboam, right, the stock market, and creating a new world order. We have this bubble with the mountains of Westworld, in the background there. Okay, so new world. Looking at this green event. So then there's another divergence, which is pretty much just down the block from, from Jaipur, which is this Delhi divergence, right? So it helps us interpret what's going on here with basically Arnold's house that we're seeing, being Arnold's building blocks for the new world. So right down the street is Delhi, which lands right in the banking district. I mean, Jaipur was by a bank as well, this ICICI bank, but look at this banking district. I mean, there's another ICICI here, and just all these banks. Now, it appears that Arnold took, his money and built new worlds, because just right up the road from Delhi, like literally in the vicinity of the coordinates, here's the stem of the coordinates. Follow this road up through the banking district. We land in Adventure Island, this massive theme park, right? And of course, right at the entrance here to Adventure Island, we get this orb and stem divergence scar with the water fountain sticking up there. Right, okay, so then that's just one park. We have Adventure Island as being like this main theme park, and then you look around it, there's all these other theme parks. Here's Adventure Island. Here's Park Swatantra. Who knows what that is? To the north there. To the east, we have Nihal Vihar Park, water treatment plant, and a prison complex, presumably, representing the Mesa, the cold storage. To the northwest, we have these water parks, perhaps representing Shogun World. And then over to the west, Chotu Ram Park with a helicopter landing pad. We see helicopters in Westworld at one point. So there's 5 parks surrounding a central main park. I'm not convinced this isn't Mirror World. It could be some type of Mirror World, or just representing what happened in the Jaipur divergence. They took control of this stock market, and built a new world, which included Westworld and these parks. Okay, so that's this green divergence. It matches up, in the next video we'll be talking about the second row, but that matches up with the creation of Escalante when they built a new world there as well. This color green we see in that image of the new world, with the forests. And okay, next event, Strawberry Milkshake, 2058. So New World in 2052, right? So that makes Ford 47. No. 37. When that happens, creates the new world when he's 37 years old. Then 6 years later, 2058, is this discovery of gene editing, right? So between New World and the murder, right, these are the 10 years where Dempsey was happy to cash those checks. Right in the middle of there, Serac discovers gene editing. So this is our pink Ghana divergence. Let's see if we find it here. Right, so these are the coordinates for Ghana. Over to the left here, we find the step 1 estates recovery center, and then somehow this face grown into an agricultural circle. I mean, we can zoom in. I don't know if that helps at all, but this is clearly a face. We have an ear, a nose, an eye, a chin, some hair, and to me it resembles Serac's face. We have the classic orb and stem structure of this divergence, the Ghana divergence, right? So of course the pink milkshake spill representing a gene editing event, where Serac is reborn. This is where Serac says, I discovered gene editing thanks to the radiation therapy. He tells Dempsey this and then shortly murders him. Pretty cool shot here. We have Serac, who we believe is Ford in this moment as well. Serac relives these moments as well, but originally this is Ford. Serac's head, completing this connection in the circle, it suggesting his importance, his role in the whole thing. Just like he's playing Ford's role. He's playing the role given to him by Ford, I guess. It's being suggested here. So this gene editing divergence, now we see that we're close to Ghana, right? Because they discuss this and then they're in a car and we see this landscape. Interesting shot here looking out the window. We'll talk about that in a second. Right, and then the actual murder of Dempsey. So we see this is in Ghana near this recovery center or this gene editing center. Right. Okay, so that's the first pink event, and it mirrors the Caleb milkshake event, also gene editing. Right, 2058. Okay, moving on to this murder event. Now this is a tricky one. As we just saw, we expect that the event is the plane crash murder, right? But there's clues here. So the main clue, I guess, the first clue is that the divergence for this event is Lille, France. I know from season 3 timelines that Lille, France is supposedly representing William's house, and this color red also is associated with William throughout all of the divergence clues. So, suggesting a connection here between a murder of Dempsey and William, and this event being labeled as the time when the stain in William started, right? Like Ford recreated William, possibly in the image of his father, as it was a way of torturing him. But okay, let's look at this divergence material. So let's see what the first image I have is. Right, this plane crash murder. Okay, so I only threw the plane crash murder in there to show this William murder. What I believe is happening here is that this murder is the one that actually happened. Caleb and Francis are an early prototype of Enguerrand here. So let's talk about this mirror. We start here seeing this event from outside the window as we're arriving on scene of the murder, and leaving the scene of the murder is the end of the murder is this plane. So they arrive in a civilian vehicle, and then during the murder it's a military vehicle. Right, now look, military vehicle as they're arriving, so this idea of time sort of reversing. Military vehicles arriving as these guys come back out to murder him right after this scene. We see that they're in a civilian vehicle, so they're leaving in a civilian vehicle. Note the hand here on the shoulder, just like when Serac kills Dempsey walks him to his death with his hand on his shoulder, right? So we have a parallel here with Ford, Serac, Caleb, and Jean-Mi, Arnold, Francis. Now this mirroring event, we're seeing these events through multiple mirrors and doorways. Also, this looks like the event that would happen first. This is like an old school type of hallway compared to this new school, new world, fancy plane, fancy cars event. So, okay. Right, so this one probably happened first, and this is William's father, the real Dempsey. So William Dempsey. This murder, right? Okay, so on to the divergence coordinate, which is this Lille, France, divergence scar. I wonder if that warehouse could be represented around here in this parking lot, because the divergence coordinate is like over here, which is kind of strange. Like, why isn't it right in front? Anyway, I'll have to look into that. This close-up picture of this place, I mean, this resembles William's house, right? That we've got these pillars out front, the stairway out front where he talks to Hale. Look, we can see chandeliers in the window. William's chandelier. We know William is a 2-floor house, pretty fancy house. So I mean, yeah, there's good reason to think this structure is representing William's house. Right down the street, I have no idea what this is, but another divergent scar representing that event. Have to look into this monument to hopefully help decode it. Okay, so that's that. Red event. The mirroring event I have here as being also William related. Right, basically this mirroring event is representing the period 2068 to 2098, the 30 years that Westworld is open, the entire maze that William goes through. Right. So this bloodshed and murder, this duct tape murder event spans 5 years, and then 2068 we have our last event. So now with Dempsey gone, with William's father gone, Ford presumably removes the last obstacle in his way to creating Westworld. If we look at this second timeline, 2068 is when Westworld opens to the public. Right, so this final divergence event is the suicide of Arnold. Right. So, right at this point, they've gone through this first part of the timeline here: Argos Initiative, Escalante terraforming, right? And this is comprising this overlap region that we talked about in the last video with the time reset, complicated area when we try to connect the two timelines. But this first one is mostly based off that Solomon 7. Okay, so over here, these final events, we have these two mirrored events. One is the suicide of Arnold, which was carried out by Wyatt, and then 30 years later, another Wyatt murder, shot in the head, Robert, right? So these, without studying the divergences, we knew that these events were mirroring each other. We have the Escalante original storyline being revamped by Ford, right at the end of season 1 for this journey into night. Mirrored event, right, which happens in 2058 in the adjusted timeline, but in the full old world timeline, 2098, when the hosts are starting to escape. Okay, which makes more sense with respect to our own real world, if you think about it. Like, Westworld, the series, will end in 2025, so the story that has still to be told up until then, is more consistent when we look at this timeline. Like, AI, by the year 3000 is a lot more believable than AI in 20 years from now. Okay, so final thing to look at is these divergence coordinates here. Adelaide, Australia. Where do those come from? They come from this EMP milkshake map, right? So it's not actually a milkshake, it's just paint chips, but this event is relating to Caleb's mother in the sense, it's the past pawn event. And, seeing this spilled milkshake reminds us of the diner milkshake. We make the connection that Dolores is Caleb's mother in a sense, at least in the sense of the revolution. And these, spilled milkshakes are helping us connect that. So, and, every time we see a host die, like Maeve, or in the first episode of season 1, we see these spilled milkshakes, mixture of, milk and blood. So, right, what are we looking at here? We're looking at this region of the spilled milkshake that I claim is Escalante. So here we have this train coming in, and I believe this region is representing the early, Argos Initiative and the early Westworld project. So I guess the best explanation would be trying to match the shape. So that whole milkshake map, the different areas matched the different shapes of the world. This one's kind of hard to see. I need to take a better photo of this to see it better. But I'll highlight the region. So this region right here, including this thing, this part would be Kangaroo Island. Oh, big spider. And so Kangaroo Island right here, and then coming down through here, this is the Adelaide Inlet, right, representing the town of Escalante right about here, and then like Arnold's laboratory out here. So I don't know if you guys can visualize that. But here's the Kangaroo Island with the laboratory, and the inlet right with the town of Escalante here. Right. Now another reason we know that this is Escalante is because this dot here, like look at this shape, compare it to this shape here. One of these is Escalante 1.0, and then one of them is 2.0. I'm guessing the big one is 1.0. Closer to the train, it was the first one, it was big. The second one, they built it pretty quickly, right? This might be the church, now that I think about it, in the middle there. Okay, so, right, this is where Arnold committed suicide, right, in Escalante for the first time. And this would be Arnold, this would be, right. So I don't think Ford's murder happened exactly in Escalante. Certainly it was close, but that brings us to the close of this video, the final images here for the mirrored